What's up everyone, it's Goose, and today I saw some fuzz in my leftovers. Today we're not talking about that kind of moldy fuzz. Today we're talking about running fuzz pedals into a modeler. The idea for this video happened when I came across an old Anderton's video where they were talking about using a fuzz into Katana, I think Mark II. And they were saying how a lot of non-tube amplifiers can't handle fuzz pedals.
No. And it kind of made us go, oh, you know what, with solid state amplifiers, we should really try fuzzes, because it's a good, like, not all solid state amps like fuzz. And even
as well.
Sorry, and even the like people things like the QC or Kemper, all those, they can't take the fuzz.
They can't take the fuzz.
And so light bulbs went off in my head, and I was like, well, I have a bunch of modelers, so why don't I test it out? Also, as a side note, I don't usually play fuzz pedals, but this was a super interesting comparison, so I wanted to do it. So today, we're going to take this Earthquaker Devices Hizumitas, which is Boris guitarist. This is Wada from Boris's signature fuzz pedal based on an elk sustainer. And yeah, we're gonna use this into a bunch of modelers and just see how they sound. Before we move on, if you like nerding out about guitar gear like I do and a bunch of comparisons between the guitar gear, consider hitting like and subscribe. So we're gonna take this fuzz pedal and we're gonna run it through a bunch of different modelers. We're gonna start with the Boss Katana, and then we're also gonna do the HX Stomp, the Quad Cortex, and the FM9. And to make this comparison a little bit more authentic, can I say authentic? Will Gibson sue me? To get a control for this experiment, I guess, this isn't really trying to see what's better or worse. This is just really comparing stuff. We're gonna use the clean channel of my Friedman Runt 50, which is a tube amp with a Fendery style clean. All of these actually are gonna be running through my Quad Cortex's IR loader. So we're gonna be running an Ownhammer V30 IR from the Rockbox set. The guitar I'll be using is my FGN Iliad 7 with Seymour Duncan Pegasus in the bridge. I actually wired this backwards on accident, so the switch is not in the correct direction for the bridge pickup. And last thing I want to mention about the setup, it's just super important, I made sure the input signal into all these devices are what the manufacturer recommends. So Neural DSP for Quad Cortex recommends not hitting the line where the red starts at all. FM9 recommends you tickle the red. I hate saying that. The HX Stomp only has a guitar pad set to on and off, and that's gonna be set to off. And then the Boss Katana doesn't have a setting for that. So maybe tube amps are easier because you don't have to fiddle with those kind of settings. But yeah, it's actually pretty important because we're actually testing the input of all of these devices by running the pedal into their inputs. So we're gonna see how they handle it. And for the Fender tones, here's just a quick sort of demo of how close I tried to get them to sound to each other. With all that out of the way, let's start the comparison. It's gonna start with the clean, and I'm gonna turn the pedal on. The first setting will be kind of like a medium fuzz setting, and then the second setting will be a more extreme setting. And you'll see those on screen when we're doing the comparisons. And also remember, this is just for fun. This isn't really saying what's better or worse. In my experience, none of these actually sound that similar. But yeah, let's start the comparison. All right, so my thoughts, if we're using the Friedman as a baseline as to what a fuzz should sound like, I think there's two things that I think a modeler should be trying to get right, and that's voicing as well as character. And what I mean by character is that the fuzz character is like, it feels like it's overloading. Whereas distortion is generally controlled sounding, fuzz is like wild sounding, and so we're going to be looking at that for the character part of it. But for the voicing, I think the two modelers that do the voicing the best are the HX Stomp and the Quad Cortex. In terms of the character, I actually think the Quad Cortex does the worst out of all these because it feels really controlled. It almost sounds like a distortion pedal that's on the verge of becoming a fuzz, but not quite there. So almost like rat-like, but still not quite as wild. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's just kind of how it feels. And when you hear that in the demo, you hear that the Quad Cortex sounds kind of polite in comparison to the other ones, whereas the other ones are trying to like basically overload the input of all the other modelers. And I think even though the voicing of all of them are still slightly different compared to the tube amp, it is kind of interesting to note that all of these units to handle both the character and the voicing really differently. With the Boss Katana, there's a bit of a mid push that makes it sound kind of like an HM2, which, you know, is kind of in line with Boss, I guess. But yeah, it had that wild character from the tube amp, just not with the same voicing. And I guess that's maybe what they're talking about on Andertons when they're talking about the Boss Katana can take a fuzz, is that it still has all the character of the fuzz, even though I still think the voicing is a little different. I think the Fractal also kind of has that same thing as the Katana. It just is still slightly less wild than the Katana, I think. Again, the Boss Katana is an amplifier technically. However, it also is a modeler. And actually, interestingly enough, the HX Stomp kind of gets the voicing and that wildness, that character of the fuzz correct. But when you ran higher fuzz settings, it started to sound kind of strange. Like it's getting wild in a different way. Like the character changed, even though there is still character. Anyway, I think all these are kind of different sounding. And I think that's kind of cool because instead of thinking about it as what's better or worse, you can think about it as I have a fuzz pedal that I usually run, and maybe I don't want to bring a big tube amp everywhere. So now, what is the best modeler for me? Which one fits what I want out of the sound of this fuzz pedal? And so with this comparison, you can kind of use that to, I guess, hopefully gauge what kind of tone you're looking for from the modeler. Some people might prefer the Quad Cortex because of the voicing and the politeness. Some people might prefer just the HX Stomp being absolutely weirdly wild in another different way than what I was expecting from when I ran it into the Friedman. And even though the FM9 in general is my main unit that I use when I'm just jamming along, I actually don't think the fuzz pedal worked the best in that for me even. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Which one did you like the fuzz into the most? And yeah, that's gonna do it for me. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will catch y'all in the next one. Later.